In a world where technology advances by leaps and bounds and social media dominates much of our time, there is a silent shadow looming over today's youth. A sin so subtle that it goes unnoticed by many, but so powerful that it threatens to drag an entire generation into a devastating spiritual destiny. This is not a sin of action, but of omission. It is not something we do, but something we fail to do. It is the sin of spiritual apathy, indifference toward the divine, and neglect of our own soul. Imagine for a moment a room full of young people, each absorbed in their own digital world. Smartphones in hand, headphones on, eyes fixed on screens that flicker with endless ephemeral information. In this scene so common in our days, an alarming truth is hidden. While these young people navigate an ocean of data, their souls are drowning in a sea of superficiality. This text is not intended to be a harsh judgment or an implacable condemnation. Instead, it seeks to be a beacon of light in the midst of darkness, an urgent and necessary wake-up call. For deep within every young heart beats a longing for meaning, a desire for transcendence that is often buried beneath layers and layers of worldly distractions. Over the next few pages, we will explore together the depths of this phenomenon. We will explore how modern society, with its promises of instant gratification and material success, has created a perfect breeding ground for this kind of spiritual disconnection. We will examine the long-term consequences of living a life focused solely on the earthly, ignoring the eternal. But all is not lost. While the outlook may seem bleak, there is also reason for hope. We will look at inspiring examples of young people who have swum against the tide, who have challenged the norm of apathy, and discovered a life filled with fulfillment, spiritual purpose, and meaning. We will learn about the tools and strategies that can help revive a dormant heart and reconnect with the divine in the midst of a chaotic world. This journey we are about to embark on is not for the faint of heart. It will require us to confront uncomfortable truths, question our priorities, and have the courage to look beyond the surface of our lives. But I promise you that at the end of this journey, you will find a renewed perspective, a deeper understanding of what really matters, and perhaps the impetus needed to effect transformative change in your lives. So prepare to dive into a deep exploration of the spiritual condition of modern youth. Join me as we unravel the layers of this silent but deadly sin, and discover together the path to a life of authenticity, purpose, and divine connection. At the heart of our modern society lies an intricate labyrinth of distractions, each more seductive than the last. This labyrinth is not made of stone walls, but of pixels, notifications, and instant gratification. It is a world designed to keep youth in a constant state of superficial stimulation, subtly distancing them from the deeper questions of existence. Let us think for a moment about a typical day in the life of a modern young person. From the moment you open your eyes, your hand instinctively reaches for your smartphone. Before you even greet the new day, you are already immersed in a torrent of messages, social media posts, and fragmented news. Breakfast becomes a session of endless scrolling, where food for the body is mixed with a digital buffet for the mind. But where is the food for the soul? Hours at school or university, which should be a time of intellectual and personal growth, are constantly being disrupted by the vibration of the phone in your pocket. Each notification is a promise of novelty, a little hit of dopamine that makes the brain crave more and more. During breaks, instead of reflecting on what you've learned or engaging in meaningful conversations with peers, groups form around screens, sharing memes or discussing the latest online drama. Afternoons, which could be times of introspection, talent development, or family connection, are diluted into binge-watching, endless video games, or aimless browsing of social media. Family dinner, once a sanctuary of communication and togetherness, is interrupted by furtive glances at screens and half-baked conversations. And when night comes, that precious moment in which human beings have traditionally confronted themselves, their deepest thoughts, and their relationship with the transcendent, becomes another session of digital consumption. The silence, so necessary for reflection and spiritual connection, is chased away by the constant hum of connectivity. This frenetic, fragmented pace of life has profound consequences on the psyche of young people. Attention spans are shortened, depth of thought diminishes, and the ability to confront life's big questions atrophies. It's as if we're raising a generation of butterflies, beautiful but ephemeral, flitting from flower to flower without ever delving into the rich soil that sustains them. The tragedy of this situation is that many young people aren't even aware of what they're losing. The sense of emptiness they experience is interpreted as boredom, and the immediate solution is to seek more external stimulation. It's a vicious cycle that drives them further and further away from their spiritual center. But how did we get to this point? The answer is complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, we have a technology industry that we have perfected the art of capturing and holding attention. The apps and platforms we use daily are designed with scientific precision to keep us hooked, using the same psychological principles that make gambling addictive. On the other hand, we live in a society that values productivity and material success above almost everything else. From an early age, young people are taught that they must always be busy, always producing, always moving forward. Downtime is seen as wasted, and contemplation is mistaken for laziness. Furthermore, the erosion of traditional structures that once provided a spiritual anchor, the extended family, strong religious communities, shared rituals and traditions, has left a void that many attempt to fill with digital experiences and virtual connections. The result is a generation that is constantly connected, but paradoxically, more disconnected than ever from its spiritual essence. It is as if they are living on the surface of a vast and deep ocean, not even realizing the wonders and mysteries that lie beneath the surface. This trap of modernity is particularly dangerous because it does not present itself as an obvious threat. It is not a roaring monster that we can easily identify and combat. It is rather like a subtle fog that takes over everything, clouding our vision and altering our perception of reality. The question we must ask ourselves is, how can we navigate this labyrinth without losing our spiritual compass? How can we take advantage of the undeniable benefits of technology and connectivity, without sacrificing our connection to the transcendent? The answer is not simple, but it begins with awareness. Recognizing the trap is the first step to escaping it. Young people need spaces and moments to stop, to get away from the digital noise, and listening to the inner voice that is often drowned out by the clamor of notifications. It is also crucial to rediscover the value of silence and solitude, not the isolation often experienced amidst a virtual crowd, but productive solitude that allows for deep reflection and self-discovery. It is in these moments of stillness that we often find the answers to life's most important questions. Furthermore, it is important to foster real, deep connections. Friendships that go beyond likes and superficial comments, conversations that challenge our beliefs and expand our horizons, shared experiences that connect us to something bigger than ourselves. Education also plays a crucial role. Not just formal education in schools and universities, but holistic education that includes spiritual and emotional development. Young people need tools to navigate not only the digital world, but also their inner world. Ultimately, escaping this trap of modernity requires an act of will. It requires the courage to swim against the tide, to question the social norms that push us towards a superficial existence. It requires the wisdom to recognize that, although the digital world offers many valuable things, it cannot satisfy the deepest needs of the human soul. The challenge for today's youth is to find a balance between the digital and the analog, between the global and the local, between connectivity and introspection. It is a difficult path, but necessary if we want to prevent an entire generation from getting lost in a sea of distractions, forgetting the true purpose of their existence. Because in the end, what is at stake is not only the quality of life in the here and now, but the eternal destiny of millions of young souls. The sin of spiritual apathy, fueled by the distractions of the modernity, is a real and present threat. But with awareness, determination, and a reconnection with the transcendent, it is a threat that can be overcome. In the next sections, we will further explore the consequences of this modern lifestyle, as well as practical strategies to combat spiritual apathy and rediscover a life of purpose and meaning. Because we firmly believe that every young person has the potential to be much more than a passive consumer of digital content. Each has the potential to be a beacon of light in a world that desperately needs direction and hope. If the trap of modernity is the labyrinth, spiritual apathy is the minotaur lurking at its center, slowly devouring the souls of young people. This apathy is not simply a lack of interest in religious or spiritual matters. It is a state of numbness of the soul, a deep disconnection from all that gives true meaning and purpose to human life. Spiritual apathy manifests itself in many ways, some subtle and some more obvious. It may be the young person who attends religious services out of family obligation, but whose mind is miles away, lost in thoughts of the latest Instagram post or the next video game he wants to play. It may be the brilliant student who pursues academic and professional success with fervor, but who never stops to ask himself why he does it or what he really hopes to achieve in life. It may also manifest as a general cynicism toward anything that cannot be measured, quantified, or scientifically proven. It is the young person who dismisses any spiritual experience as superstition or self-deception, closing the door on a whole world of possibilities and experiences beyond the material. But perhaps the most dangerous manifestation of spiritual apathy is the one that masquerades as open-mindedness or neutrality. It is the young person who says, "Really, I'm not going to be a fool. I respect all beliefs, but I don't really care about any of them." This stance, which at first glance may seem tolerant and enlightened, often hides a deep indifference to the most important questions of existence. Spiritual apathy is dangerous precisely because it is not felt as an immediate danger. It does not cause acute pain or provoke immediate crises. Rather, it is like a chronic disease that weakens the immune system of the soul, making it vulnerable to all kinds of spiritual ills. One of the most devastating consequences of spiritual apathy is the loss of the sense of the sacred. In a world where everything is reduced to data, likes, and transactions, the capacity to experience wonder, reverence, and transcendence atrophies. Apathetic young people can walk by the greatest wonders of creation, a spectacular sunrise, the birth of a child, an act of selfless love, and feel nothing more than a mild passing interest. This loss of the sense of the sacred has profound ramifications. It affects the way young people relate to others, to nature, and to themselves. Without a sense of the sacred, human relationships become transactional, nature becomes a resource to be exploited, and the self is reduced to a collection of wants and needs to be satisfied. Another serious consequence of spiritual apathy is the erosion of moral resilience. When there is no spiritual anchor, when there is no clear sense of what is truly important, it becomes much easier to give in to the pressures and temptations of the world. Apathetic young people are more susceptible to being swept along by the currents of popular culture, adopting values and behaviors without really questioning them. In a world where technology advances by leaps and bounds and information flows endlessly, a silent shadow looms over today's youth. It is not a tangible threat, but rather a threat to the world. Spiritual apathy is not a disease that can be diagnosed with medical tests, nor a danger that authorities can combat with laws or policies. It is an evil that eats away at the very soul of our younger generation, a sin so subtle that it goes unnoticed by many, but so lethal that it threatens to drag an overwhelming majority of young people into an eternal destiny of separation from God. This sin, which we have identified as spiritual apathy, does not discriminate. It affects the rich and the poor, the brilliant students and those who struggle in school, the popular and the lonely. It is an evil that transcends borders, cultures, and social classes. And the most alarming thing is that many young people are not even aware that they are falling into its clutches. Imagine for a moment a poison that causes no pain, that has no taste or smell, that infiltrates the system without the victim noticing. This is how spiritual apathy works. It does not hurt, it does not alarm, it does not arouse suspicion. It simply numbs the soul, little by little, day by day, until the young man finds himself completely disconnected from his divine purpose, from his eternal destiny. In the next few pages, we will delve into the depths of this phenomenon. We will explore its causes, its manifestations, and most importantly, how to combat it. Because while the outlook may seem bleak, there is hope. There always is when it comes to God's love and grace. Prepare yourself for a journey of self-discovery, deep reflection, and we hope transformation. Because understanding this sin is the first step to overcoming it. And overcoming it could mean the difference between a fulfilling life, full of purpose and meaning, and an empty existence that leads to an eternal destiny separated from the source of all love and life. To truly understand the severity of spiritual apathy, we must first examine its roots. Like a doctor who is not content to treat symptoms, but seeks the cure, we must first examine its roots. To understand the underlying cause of the disease, We must delve into the very heart of this evil that threatens our youth. First, we find a society that has elevated individualism and hedonism to unprecedented levels. From an early age, young people are taught that self-fulfillment and the pursuit of pleasure are the ultimate goals of life. Be yourself, live in the moment. If it makes you happy, do it are mantras that are constantly repeated in the media, in advertising, and in popular culture. These messages, while seemingly harmless and even positive on the surface, carry a dangerous burden when taken to the extreme. They foster a self-centered mindset that leaves little room for transcendence, for the pursuit of something greater than oneself. In this context, God and spirituality become options, elements to be taken or left as one sees fit, rather than the foundation upon which a meaningful life is built. Furthermore, we live in an age of instant gratification. Technology has accustomed us to getting what we want with just a click. Information, entertainment, relationships, everything is at our fingertips. This immediacy has created an impatient generation, which struggles with anything that requires time, effort, and dedication. Spiritual life, which by its nature demands patience, discipline, and perseverance, then becomes too great a challenge for many. Another crucial factor is the erosion of traditional structures that once served as pillars of faith and morality. Family, church, and community have undergone significant transformations in recent decades. Many young people grow up in homes where faith is a taboo subject or simply irrelevant. Churches, for their part, often struggle to connect with the younger generations, using languages and methods that are outdated, or unattractive to young people immersed in digital culture. Education also plays a role in this phenomenon. In many educational systems, a purely secular approach has been adopted that leaves little or no room for spiritual or existential reflection. Young people learn about science, technology, and practical skills, but are rarely encouraged to contemplate life's big questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? What happens after death? Added to this is the proliferation of philosophies and beliefs that promise happiness and fulfillment without the need for God. From scientific materialism that reduces everything to physical processes, to New Age spiritualities that offer a watered-down, personalized version of transcendence, young people are faced with a buffet of options competing for their attention and loyalty. The result of all this is a generation that, in many cases, does not actively reject God, but simply does not see the need for Him. Spiritual apathy is not so much a conscious decision as a gradual slide into indifference. It is as if the soul is numb, unable to feel spiritual hunger or thirst. This condition is particularly dangerous because it does not cause immediate pain. Unlike other sins that can have visible and painful consequences, spiritual apathy allows a person to function in society, even succeed by the world's standards, while his soul slowly withers away. It is crucial to understand that this is not merely a moral or social problem, but a deeply spiritual one. The Bible warns us about this state in several passages. In the book of Revelation, Christ addresses stern words to the church at Laodicea, a community that had become lukewarm in its faith. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were cold or hot. But because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. Rev. 3:15-16. This spiritual lukewarmness, this lack of passion for God, is precisely what we are seeing in much of today's youth. They are not openly hostile to the faith, but neither are they on fire for it. They simply exist in a state of indifference which, in the words of Christ, is even worse than open opposition. Therefore the Lord says, "This people draws near to me with their mouth and honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Their worship of me is based on mere man-made rules." Isaiah 29 verse 13. Here we see another manifestation of spiritual apathy. A superficial religiosity that complies with external forms but lacks a genuine connection with God. Many young people may attend religious services, participate in rituals, or even do charitable works, but without a true transformation of the heart. The seriousness of this sin lies in its capacity to deceive. It can cause a person to think they are spiritually fine when in reality, they are standing on the edge of an eternal cliff. Jesus warned about this in the Sermon on the Mount. Not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, "Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. Matthew 7 verses 21 to 23. These words are a sobering reminder that salvation is not about outward actions or nominal affiliation with faith, but about a genuine, life-changing relationship with God. Spiritual apathy, therefore, is not just a problem of behavior or belief, but a condition of the heart. It is a state in which the soul has become insensitive to the things of God, where eternity has become blurred, and the temporal has taken center stage. To combat this evil, we need more than just superficial adjustments or more attractive religious programs. It requires a spiritual awakening, a renewal of the heart that can only come from God Himself. As the prophet Ezekiel said, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. Ezekiel 36 verse 26. This is the kind of transformation that today's youth need. Not a mere modification of behavior, but a radical change of heart that restores spiritual sensitivity and rekindles passion for God. In the following sections, we will explore how this apathy manifests itself concretely in the lives of young people, the short and long-term consequences of this spiritual state, and finally, how we can combat this sin and help our generation rediscover a vibrant and transforming faith. Spiritual apathy, as we have seen, is a subtle evil that infiltrates the lives of young people almost imperceptibly. But while it may be difficult to detect in its early stages, its manifestations become increasingly evident as it takes root in the heart. Let's look at some of the ways this sin manifests itself in the daily lives of today's youth. Distorted priorities. One of the clearest signs of spiritual apathy is the distortion of priorities. Instead of seeking first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, as Jesus instructs us in Matthew 6 verse 33, many young people place other goals at the center of their lives. Academic success, popularity, romantic relationships, the accumulation of wealth, or the pursuit of exciting experiences take the place that God should occupy. This reversal of priorities is not always obvious. Many young people would claim that God is important to them if asked directly. However, a closer examination of how they spend their time, energy, and desire can lead to the loss of their lives. And resources would reveal a different reality. Hours spent on social media, video games, or entertainment far outweigh time spent in prayer, Bible reading, or worship. The problem is not that these other activities are inherently evil, but that they have usurped the central place that God should occupy in the believer's life. As a result, faith becomes peripheral, a secondary consideration at best. Another troubling symptom is the absence of a true desire for the things of God. The psalmist wrote, As the deer pants for the water brooks, so pants my soul for you, O God. Psalm 42 verse 1. This deep longing for God, this spiritual thirst, is noticeably absent in many young people today. The Bible, instead of being seen as the bread of life, becomes just another book on the shelf, consulted occasionally but rarely devoured with enthusiasm. Prayer, rather than being a vital and ongoing dialogue with the Creator, is reduced to occasional requests in times of crisis or empty rituals before meals. This lack of spiritual hunger is particularly alarming because it indicates a fundamental disconnection with the source of spiritual life. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never hunger, and he who believes in me will never thirst. John 6 verse 35. When there is no hunger for this spiritual bread, it is a sign that something is deeply wrong in the relationship with God. Spiritual apathy often manifests itself in a growing conformity to the values and practices of the world. The Apostle Paul warned, Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12 verse 2. Yet many young people find it increasingly difficult to distinguish between Christian values and secular values. This conformity can be seen in areas such as sexual ethics, where the norms of morality are not the same as those of the world. Bible traditions are often dismissed as outdated or irrelevant. It manifests itself in attitudes towards money and possessions, where the materialism of the world infiltrates the mindset of young believers. It is evident in the language used, in the forms of entertainment chosen, in the friendships cultivated. What is particularly worrying is that this conformity is often not seen as a problem. Many young people have adopted a Christianity-light mentality that allows them to maintain a nominal Christian identity, while living in a way that is virtually indistinguishable from their non-believing peers.